You are listening to Grab Them by the Pod, a member of the ACE Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us once again here at Grab Them by the Pod. I am Kevin along with Jesse, and so much has happened since we last came on the airwaves. So, Jesse, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, the number one thing I want to do is give a shout out to one of our loyal listeners, Jimmy out there. He contacted us and just tells us how much he loves our show, and I know he's listening to this right now. So I want to say thanks for listening, and I hope you keep on listening and give us all the wonderful words of wisdom and happiness you can give us.
Yes, thank you, Jimmy.
Whatever I'm trying to say. But anyways, when it comes to the real news, last week, news broke that Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy was going to retire. I will not lie, it was a rough day for me. I got a little angry and upset at that news. But
RBG, you better live forever, girls.
Yes, we were saying it has to be like a weekend at Bernie situation if anything goes wrong. Just keep her going, stuff her, whatever you have to do. The reason this upset me so much is because this is going to let Donald Trump nominate a second Supreme Court justice, and this could create the most conservative court in generations. His retirement is going to be effective on July 31st. Kennedy's 81. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan, so he's been around for a while. But it just seems weird to me that one of these guys would retire while we're possibly in the middle of a constitutional crisis. But, that's their choice, I guess.
Well, I have some, unsubstantiated reports that I've seen, and I can't for the life of me remember where I saw it. But I read a report that perhaps Kennedy has a son who might be involved somehow with the Russia meddling case.
Really?
And so it might be breaking at some point in the next few months that there's
those are
involvement there.
Reports, though, right?
These are exactly. These are unconfirmed reports. I am speculating to the nth degree here, but wouldn't that be something if it was? But either way, the guy's 81. Most people don't work till they're 81, and he's been on there for over 30 years. It is time for him to retire, but it does seem a little odd that this is the timing of the event.
Although the way things are going, I think I might be working till I'm 81. Unless things get better, we'll see. Why is this important? Kennedy, while conservative, has been the court's swing vote for basically the last decade or so. So no matter what happens with Trump, he'll have left his mark on this court, giving it a solid 5-justice conservative majority, seeing that he did not seat Merrick Garland in the beginning of his presidency and instead put Neil Gorsuch on there, obviously a more conservative judge. This is bad news for a lot of things. Bad news for racial discrimination, bad news for gay rights. These are all areas where Kennedy was a little more liberal in his leading. And the talk is now, it's funny how, this person's gone. Now we have to have a new swing vote. But the talk is that Chief Justice John Roberts may become the new swing vote on the court.
Yes, Kennedy has, as you said, been known as the swing vote over the last 25, 30 years. He was most recently the swing vote that swung the Janus versus Ask Me decision just last week. He was also the swing vote in Obergefell versus Hodges, which had to do with gay marriage, the Citizens United decision, D.C. versus Heller, which allowed handgun ownership in the District of Columbia, as well as the Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, which upheld Roe versus Wade back in 1992. So the guy has been that key critical linchpin vote on a lot of our major decisions in the last 30 years. And so it's going to have an impact on our court going forward.
So who's going to replace it? Well, there's a lot of people. Trump had put out a list of 25 people that could possibly be appointed to the Supreme Court. So it could be really any of them. Some of the people that he's considering are Washington-based federal appeals court judge Brett Kavanaugh. He was a former Kennedy clerk, and I think he's kind of close with Kennedy. There were the 3 other judges that Trump looked at when he was appointing Neil Gorsuch. That's William Pryor, Thomas Hardiman, Amul Thapar, if I'm saying that name correctly. If not, please forgive me. But the problem is that these 25 prospective judges that list was put together with input from the Federalist Society, with the Heritage Foundation, and that's not really assuring, especially when a lot of these folks are going around saying, well, Roe versus Wade is dead, and they already haven't put someone on the bench. It's kind of a scary time, to be honest.
And I thought justice was apolitical. I guess not. So a Trump court packing a court by President Trump, the gift that keeps on giving. It's kind of like an STD.
And you'd think, you wouldn't put anybody on the Supreme Court, or at least nominate them right now, because this is an election year. And as Mitch McConnell famously said back in 2016, they weren't going to confirm Merrick Garland because it wouldn't have been fair to the American people, and we should let them speak before they do anything. That's not going to happen this time. They're going to, I don't really feel strongly that the Democrats would take back the Senate anyways, but they're going to push this through before the November elections and get them on there so that no matter what happens in November, they have a person on the bench.
Right. Apparently, it's only good when the shoe is on the other foot to demand that they wait until after the elections. So, we'll see. Will some of those Republican senators who have been against Donald Trump, like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, will they put their money where their mouth is and vote against their party because they dislike the president?
Well, Susan Collins said that she wouldn't endorse anybody who was against Roe versus Wade. The problem I'm seeing going forward is the Democrats don't have to just worry about the Republicans. They have to worry about the Democrats. Democrats up in red states, we see this in West Virginia, we see this in North Dakota, they're maybe worried about getting reelected if their more conservative voters get upset with them, and they may cross the aisle just to ensure their own reelection, which, it's between a rock and a hard place. But with the current makeup of the Senate, it's 51-49 Republicans. I know with what's going on with John McCain, there's a good chance he wouldn't vote, but it's still 50-49. So if you could keep all of the Democrats together voting in a block and then pull someone over like a Collins, like a Murkowski, you might be able to push through a more moderate judge. But the way things go in this Congress and in this government these days, I just don't feel very confident about that actually happening.
Yeah, it's not sitting well with me either. So we will have to wait and see over the next weeks and months how this is going to go down.
And Walt Kennedy, he has been relatively conservative. You mentioned Citizens United, things like that. He should be remembered for what happened with being a champion of gay rights and same-sex marriage. He wrote the ruling and said, "No longer may this liberty be denied. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family." So if nothing else, that's something he's done that's left a lasting positive legacy on the United States. So we'll see. I think it's next Monday, actually, that he's going to announce who he's going to nominate. So hold on to your butts. It's going to be a wild ride, I think. So what else is going on? Well, there's John Bolton and Putin. National Security Advisor John Bolton met with Russia President Vladimir Putin last Wednesday. This comes in advance of the planned meeting between Putin and Trump coming this July. No one's surprised, but Putin put out a nice, warm greeting for Bolton. Putin spoke about how disappointed he was with the current state of U.S.-Russia relations. I wonder why that's the way it is right now. He specifically said that he's become upset with what's become of the political environment in the U.S. Putin said, "Your visit here to Moscow inspires hope that we will be able to take first steps to restore full-fledged relations between Russia and the United States. Russia never sought confrontation." Yeah, right. And I hope that today we will be able to talk about what we can do from both sides in order to restore full-fledged relations on the foundation of equality and the respect for each other's interests. Well, that's nonsense, isn't it?
Oh, look, how cute. We're capitulating to Putin again. What? Trump and Putin going to be going to dinner and a movie here. This all just seems too, I'm not okay with this.
No, see, it's not dinner and a movie, Kevin. It's kind of a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and then Putin won't return Trump's calls afterwards. He gets what he wants, and then he's out.
Well, the president's used to those scenarios. So.
Yeah, he's usually on the other side of things, but yeah, I think he is familiar. I mean, listen, all of our intelligence agencies and anybody who's a non-Trump sycophant has said that if you look at the evidence, Russia did seek a confrontation, unlike what Putin says. They confronted. Only the problem was that confrontation wasn't between Russia and the United States. They orchestrated it so that it was between Americans, between us. They messed with our elections, and they won. And that's why Trump is in the White House right now. And they're going to do it again in 2020 if we don't do something to stop them. And as of now, the administration isn't doing anything to stop that, and that's scary.
Yeah, this is why it's critically important to teach the youth of America how to verify sources and to tell real from fake news.
I'm telling you, the more I see, the more I just lose any hope that people are going to be able to do that. Bolton said that he hopes they could find areas where they can agree and make progress together. He said, even in the earlier days when our countries had differences, our leaders and their advisors met. I think it was good for both countries, good for stability in the world, and President Trump feels very strongly about that subject. The problem is, yeah, they may have met during the Cold War, but Trump isn't Kennedy, Trump isn't Reagan, Trump isn't even Nixon. I don't have any confidence that Trump could meet with Putin and not be manipulated. I mean, we've all seen the jokes and the memes about being the puppet master and mini-me and things like that. Reagan, he had his faults, but he knew how to deal with Russia. People keep saying, even his daughter said, I think, that Reagan would be turning in his grave if he could see what was happening right now with Russia. So a meeting, we were worried about what would happen with Kim Jong-un and Trump being alone together. It worries me just as much, if not even more, with Trump being alone in the room with Putin and what may come of that meeting.
Yeah, the idea that this is good for stability in the world, it would be true if it weren't clear that we were being played by the other side. And will this be another Singapore all over again, where Trump comes home telling us, oh, we can go to bed easy, rest easy now, everything's solved, only to find out a few weeks later by our intelligence officials that perhaps he's not actually going to get rid of his nuclear weapons after all? Surprise, surprise. So it remains to be seen what's going to go down between Putin and Trump. I don't have an awful lot of confidence that it's going to go well in our favor.
It goes to show what this relationship is like. I mean, you'd think when this was all going down, maybe the United States and the White House would be able to go and tell everybody what was happening. This all happened, and Russia was the first person to actually put out the information that this meeting did indeed happen. It's a real crack communications team at 600 Pennsylvania where they get scooped by Russia to news to Americans.
Yeah, and more evidence that Russia's at the controls of this relationship.
I find this meeting to be odd for a couple of reasons. First, Trump is currently being investigated for a number of things. One of them is collusion with Russia. Trump will say it's fake news, and I know Russia is a major player on the world stage, but it just looks bad that people are saying that you worked with Russia, whether that's true or not. That's the investigation going on right now. Maybe you want to hold off on meeting with them. And next, Russia, as I mentioned earlier, tried and succeeded to mess with our elections. They didn't hack into our voting machines, maybe, but they did hack into something, and that something was the American psyche. They're the originators of fake news, and without their troll farms, there's a better than not chance that Hillary Clinton would be president right now. So all this is going down, and all this happened, and Trump kind of just brushes it off, says, Putin says he didn't do it, and I'll go meet with him again. It just it seems to be a sad state of affairs where the president of the United States just brushes this off his shoulder like it was no big deal, and just goes and meets with a country who I feel confident they're the enemy. They're screwing with us right now, and we're letting them.
Yeah, the Russians may not have hacked into our election machines. What they did was exploit Americans' complacency, right? And they got into our minds, and they affected the way people voted. So they didn't have to hack into the machines. They got into the minds of America.
So I was looking at something online today, and they're going on, is this new information about Bill Clinton meeting with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac? And I'm like, you know what? At this point, I'd just put Hillary in jail if it'll shut them up from all this Clinton conspiracy. I'm so tired of these people who just hark on these things that mean nothing from 2.5 years ago, yet just turn a blind eye to things going on with Russia. And again, this is just another example of Trump embracing authoritarian leaders while shunning and sometimes just outwardly mocking leaders that should be our allies, whether it's Putin, Kim Jong-un, our Filipino president, Rodrigo Duterte. I can never say his name. Is it Duterte?
Duterte.
That's why you're the history teacher, Kevin. You can always say these things correctly. Trump seems drawn to a certain kind of leader. But at the same time, he's criticizing Trudeau and Merkel and Macron and all these people that should be our friends. And he criticizes them for the littlest things. It just shows what kind of power Trump respects. And it's not the kind of power the president should.
It's because he fancies himself one of them, one of those dictators, those authoritarian rulers. He wants to have the powers that they do. He's in the wrong country.
Remember when Xi from China said, basically said he'd become president for life, and he's like, maybe we'll do that here. And he said he's joking, and he probably was, but there's a little bit of truth in that. He would love to be here forever and just become a dictator here. Yeah,
I wouldn't say he was joking. I would say that maybe he recognizes that's not really a possibility, but I think in his mind he would like that.
Sometimes, Kevin, if I'm talking to a girl, I can kind of make it known that I'm kind of interested, but in such a way that if it doesn't go well, it's just a joke. But if she likes it, then I'm in. I think maybe that's what Trump was doing. So, and I hope anybody in Connecticut, if you're talking to me and you're a girl, forget I said that. I really do like you. Something that's been going on over the past few weeks here has been the harassment of political figures. It started first with Kirstjen Nielsen. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen her really get hit hard over the policies of the administration. She's been the mouthpiece of some of these detained immigrants. And last Tuesday, she was confronted while having dinner in a Mexican restaurant in D.C., and it comes as a reaction to the Trump administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy and her flat-out lies about this policy. By the way, this restaurant is just a few blocks away from the White House at 14th and F. To our D.C. listeners, if you want to go, I hear it's fantastic. These protesters repeatedly yelled shame at Nielsen. It's a reference to Game of Thrones. I know you don't watch, Kevin. But I have to tell you, if this was all going down and I was in charge, if I was in Nielsen's position, I probably wouldn't go to a Mexican restaurant. It just shows she doesn't know anything about what the people are seeing when she goes out and does this stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, it shows a severe lack of tact on her part. Another example of how out of touch the administration actually is with the issues of real people.
It's not that I would condone. I don't condone verbally attacking these people. I think it comes down to that I don't agree with it, but I don't feel bad for them. And we'll talk about that even more a little later with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I don't want to say they have it coming to them, but they kind of have it coming to them.
They certainly do. And I mean, come on. Let's get to the obvious here, right? Kirstjen Nielsen, you're from Scandinavia. You're of immigrant stock yourself, but you're the blonde-haired, blue-eyed kind. So what's this really about? We can read between the lines here. We see what's going on.
Well, she is the person during the initial days of the Trump presidency when they tried to have the travel ban, said she wasn't aware that Norway is mostly white people. So, who knows what she actually knows. It's been a big couple weeks for the Democratic Socialists. The person who was really leading the charge and yelling shame was a protester by the name of Allison Herber. If I can say her name. There should be another. I feel like there should be another.
Perhaps it's a silent H. Maybe it's Raybar.
There should be another vowel in there somewhere. But the funny thing is, she's a paralegal specialist at the Justice Department. I'm all for your right to protest, but when you do it and you work for the federal government, you got to be careful because that's an easy way to lose your job.
Yeah, true, you have the right to have your own political persuasions, but you've got to be careful about exactly how you show it when you work in such a position.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and you see it on both sides, that it's your right to protest, but you also have to deal with the consequences of your protest. So, more power to her, but I think it's more bravery and or stupidity than I would have to go do those things. But this wasn't a standalone issue. We also saw the Virginia restaurant, the Red Hen, ask Sarah Huckabee Sanders to leave while she was there with her family. Owner Stephanie Wilkinson said that she had asked Sanders to leave because the restaurant employs several LGBT employees, and Sanders has defended Trump's call to bar transgender people from the military. What do you think about this situation?
Well, kind of like you had said, I don't necessarily condone berating and belittling people because I see that as no better than what they're doing. But I can understand. I can understand people's frustration. I understand where it's coming from. And I think on the part of the members of the administration, they should see it coming. They can't expect to do whatever they want to do and say whatever they want to say and then be able to not have that impact them in their lives outside of work. That's, you are a public figure and you are standing up for somebody who is very unpopular for, at least half of this country. It's going to happen whether you like it or not, whether you think it's right or not. So they better be prepared to take it.
I mean, I just said that protester, had the right to protest but had to deal with the consequences. It goes both ways. I mean, they're out there setting very unpopular policy with more than half of this country and doing things that I think are relatively despicable, though obviously others disagree. That's what happened. I mean, she then later tweeted out, Sarah Huckabee Sanders did, that the owners actions say more about her than they do me, and that I will always do my best to treat people, including those I disagree with, respectfully and continue to do so. I think people like Jim Acosta may disagree on that one, but that's how she treats the media. That's fake news media.
Well, she's upset about getting thrown out of a restaurant because she supports the president and his policies. But, how is that any different than the Trump administration supporting the right of Christian bakers not to make wedding cakes for gay couples based on his religious beliefs?
the whole thing, everything is just a giant spiral. And you just keep going back and forth, and it really just causes a bigger mess and something that's just not needed in this country at this time. Although I have to laugh that former director of the Office of Government Ethics, Walter Schaub, tweeted out that Sanders' tweet was a clear violation of ethics law, which prohibits government employees from using public office for private gain. And he said it's basically the same that if an ATF agent pulled out his badge at a restaurant when they tried to throw him out. Because this all came from her press secretary account, not her personal account, although Sanders tried to say, well, it was news of the day, and that's why I was talking about it. But it's not the first time that the Trump administration has done things like we've seen Kellyanne Conway do things like this. Ethics don't necessarily mean much to these folks. She should at least be admonished. I'm not saying she should be fired, but she should get a little rap on the hands at least and not do that again in the future.
Well, that would have to come from the commander-in-chief, and I don't see him doing that anytime soon. I'm all for protests. My biggest concern here is that perhaps it might be going too far and become counterproductive by shifting some sympathy towards the president and his staff.
Yeah, and I'm all for sympathy for someone when they deserve it, but I don't think the president and his staff deserve our sympathy yet, so I don't want to see them get it. It just helps their cause because they like to play woe is me. I mean, Sanders has really been playing the victim here, and while she was a victim to a certain degree, it's like in the end, you just get up and go somewhere else. It's not the end of the world. Last week the New York Times had an opinion piece titled "We Have a Crisis of Democracy, Not Manners," and to me that really hits the nail on the head. This comes from the White House that said, "F your feelings" on their shirts during the election. They still scream "lock her up" at Hillary Clinton at this point. It doesn't mean anything. So for them to say that the manners and in this country are just going down, it's just crazy. They started it, so they can't cry wolf now.
Yeah, and perhaps the people who made out the worst in all of this were the owners of other restaurants known as the Red Hen, such as the one here in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, that have been getting all kinds of negative Yelp reviews and other hate mail as a result of this.
There are ones in Canada getting yelled at. It just has it's the same name. It's not the same store. It doesn't take too much internet sleuthing to find out that they're not connected. Trump even went on there and went after the actual one that kicked out Sarah Huckabee Sanders and said the Red Hen restaurant should focus more on cleaning its filthy cannabis doors and windows, badly needs a paint job, rather than refusing to serve a fine person, yeah, sure, like Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I always had a rule: if a restaurant is dirty on the outside, then it's dirty on the inside. Of that, of course, is complete phooey. State inspection records show the Red Hen has gotten a clean bill of health just earlier this year. But on the other hand, Trump's properties have faced a lot of different violations over the years, including fly and cockroach infestations, food stored in improper temperatures, dirty conditions. Just last April's D.C. hotel, which to me and you, Kevin, I think will always be the old post office. To anybody who spent time in D.C., it's the old post office. Just in April was cited with 9 food health issues. So it's just laughable for Trump to go after places like this and say it's disgusting and it's dirty when he can't even keep his own house in order.
Yeah, it was probably cleaner in there when it was the old post office with its food court. I remember eating in there a few times and thinking, hey, this it may not be the cleanest place here, but the food's good. That was probably cleaner. Probably have better reviews from the health department.
It was a simpler time, Kevin.
Exactly. Trump can't even resist judging buildings by their appearance, let alone women.
Well, we all know what he said about the White House when he first moved in. Basically said it was a dump. Didn't like it, so yeah. But there's more and more going on with this. At a rally 2 weekends ago, Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters told supporters that for these members of his cabinet who remain and try to defend him, they're not going to be able to go to a restaurant. They're not going to be able to stop at a gas station. They're not going to be able to shop at a department store. The people are going to turn on them. They're going to protest. They're going to absolutely harass them until they decide that they're going to tell the president, no, I can't hang with you. This is wrong. This is unconscionable, and we can't keep doing this to children. In response to that, Republicans claimed that she was promoting violence, and she's always been a little nutty. Maxine Waters, she's kind of crazy in my book, and she was working her supporters up. But I also think the Republicans are kind of just pushing this a little more. I don't think she was calling for people to go shoot people or things like that.
Yeah, you ever seen a Trump rally? You ever seen the president at a Trump rally?
I mean, he's said he'd pay legal bills for people to go punch people. So yes, sadly, I have. I'll give Chuck Schumer. I'll give him some credit. He did say, I strongly disagree with those who advocate harassing folks. If they don't agree with you, no one should call for the harassment of political opponents. That's not right. It's not America. But also, since this has all gone down, people have threatened Maxine Waters. She had to cancel events because they were threatening to shoot her and stuff. But of course, the White House doesn't get upset with that. They only get upset when Maxine Waters says something somewhat controversial.
And I think there's a difference between promoting, violence and harassment of the Trump staff and stating the obvious.
Yeah. I think the number one thing I've learned from this, at least, is that protesting is part of the democratic process. We all knew that, but it's that people's perception of protesting changes based on the issue and which side you agree with. It's not cool to tell Sarah Huckabee Sanders to leave if you're a Republican. If you're a Democrat, yeah, it's not so bad. If you're going to go out there and protest outside of the Red Hen, it's cool if you're a Republican, maybe not so cool if you're a Democrat. So that's what we always like to say, and we don't always do as good a job as we would like. To try to look at the position from the other side, that really helps you better understand the issue as a whole. But we're a country that's divided and becoming even more so. So I think people should follow. You got a shirt on this weekend, Kevin, that had a elephant and a donkey that said "Let's be friends," and we don't see that much anymore. But I think really that's what we should be embracing right now.
That's absolutely what should happen. What good has come of us retreating to our respective corners the way we have?
Sadly, I just keep thinking it's going to go further and further to the fringes until something happens, and hopefully it'll bring us back to the center. Because before all this Trump stuff went down, I always thought that we were more centrist than we thought, and that it was things like Fox News or MSNBC, the things on either side, the commentators that really divided us more so than people actually were. But now I'm not so sure. Next, this is really old news, Kevin, but I think we had to talk about it just because we haven't been on in a week and a half or so, and this is just such an insane story. I think we couldn't let it pass by. Now we have to remember it's the infamous jacket Melania wore when she was visiting the child detention centers in Texas a few weeks ago. While she was on her way, she was photographed wearing a jacket that said, "I don't really care, do you?" This led to a lot of criticism, especially because the White House is being accused of treating immigrant children poorly. It was just a bad look.
Yeah, again, it's tone deaf, it's tactless, it's out of touch with the needs of the people. Several publications, including Vanity Fair, have likened the First Lady to Marie Antoinette of the "Let Them Eat Cake" fame.
Really? I mean, that's a very good example. I mean, it blows my mind that she would do that. I mean, first of all, the jacket was from Zara, retails at $39. Does Melania strike you as the kind of person that wears a $39 jacket?
Kind of slumming it, don't you think?
Yeah, tell me about it. Only the best. It wasn't even gold plated for the Trumps. Plus, it's summer in D.C. and she was headed to Texas. I spent a lot of time in D.C. It's super, super hot in D.C. In June, Texas.
And I'm going to Texas on Wednesday, so yeah, it's hot.
So what was she doing wearing a jacket at all? It makes no sense. Was she trolling the children? Was she trolling Donald? Who the hell knows? It shouldn't have been done at all because no matter what her intent was, it looked bad and she should have known better. And by the way, I think that her spokeswoman should be fired too. Her spokeswoman tweeted out that it was hashtag "It's just a jacket," and that Melania's meeting with the children impacted her greatly. But then Donald Trump contradicted her and said that it wasn't just a jacket. It was a message to the fake news media. They can't even stay on the same page, within the same hour or so. But she hires staffers, whether it's her spokeswoman, whether it's her body woman, whether it's her chief of staff. They are there to make sure things like this don't happen. They may have been being too smart for their own good. They should have known better and not let her wear this because it just looked bad for her and bad for the president. And for the most part, Melania's had some issues, but she's pretty much skated by in it being, she's the woman that's trapped in the White House and wants to get out. But when she does things like this, it just really hurts her cause and really pulls away any sympathy I have for her at all.
Yes, as it was tweeted, it's just a jacket and that the children impacted her greatly as she got back on a plane and headed back to the squalor that is the White House.
But, Obama once wore a tan suit, so I'll be up in arms about that. That was horrible.
Faux pas.
Trump's had a difficult times with his own caucus recently. There's been a growing rift between Trump and the House Freedom Caucus, which is a group of conservatives and libertarian Republicans in the House. For some reason, Trump keeps attacking publicly Representative Mark Sanford, who recently lost his primary, and it's really just starting to piss off and annoy the caucus. On Monday night, Congressman Justin Amash pushed fellow Republicans to act more forcefully in their defense of Sanford. Apparently, he was screaming and yelling at one point, and it was heard by reporters in the outside room. Another caucus member said that he heard Amash yell, "I don't want to be part of a group that won't stick up for its own," and he even threatened to quit the caucus.
I like it when you say caucus.
He later confirmed those comments and said, Trump should stop. I don't know why he thinks it's appropriate or a good idea. What I said was that he needs to stand up. We need to stand up for ourselves and not allow anyone to bully us. From everything we hear, Sanford, for his issues, is a very popular member of the caucus. So Trump's attacking him. It rubs people the wrong way. It just makes no sense.
Doesn't at all. But of course, Mark Sanford, does he not have his skeletons in his closet?
Oh, he does, and we'll get to that in just a second. Don't you worry. But going back to the president and his truthfulness, he flat out lied, and no one cares. No one cares that he flat out lied when he said, "Had a great meeting at the House GOP last night at the Capitol. They applauded and laughed loudly when I mentioned my experience with Mark Sanford. I have never been a fan of his." Amash tweeted out a rebuttal saying House Republicans had front row seats to POTUS's dazzling display of pettiness and insecurity. Nobody applauded or laughed. People were disgusted. And that's a Republican congressman saying that, yet people just let it go. Oh, he flat out lied. There are many witnesses that he lied, but why make a big thing of it? It's President Trump.
Yes, that's our Trump.
That's my Trump. The time has come for the Freedom Caucus to make a choice. Do they defend Trump even when he lies, even when he bullies, even when he just makes the party look like a fool? Or do they stand up for what's right? Sadly, I think we know the answer. We've seen it time and time again that they may, push back a little bit, but in the end they fall back in lockstep with President Trump and they do whatever he wants because they're afraid of their own re-election bids. And again, we've said this in the past. That's not how members of Congress are supposed to act. They're supposed to fight for their constituents and do what's right, not for their own self-interest.
Yeah, if I had to take a guess, I wouldn't be too hopeful.
And they're hypocrites. The caucus loves going after Paul Ryan for the littlest things. If he had made these comments about Sanford, they'd be pushing for him to step down as speaker, before he even, steps down himself at the end of this year. But when Trump does it, they just say it's wrong and move on. But what you had said recently, do you want to give us a little background on Mark Sanford?
Well, don't mind if I do. Mark Sanford, of course, we all should remember back in 2009 when, as governor of South Carolina, he disappeared for a week, which worried his wife, and so she called the police. The governor is missing. Told her he was going away to hike the Appalachian Trail, but he didn't return phone calls from his chief of staff, even from his family on Father's Day. And lo and behold, he wasn't actually hiking the Appalachian Trail, unless, of course, that trail stretches all the way down to South America, because he was eventually spotted returning on a flight from Argentina, where he had been off with his mistress. And somehow South Carolina elected him again, not only to govern the state, but to represent them in Washington, D.C.
I want to say I'm surprised, but I lived outside of Washington, D.C. for a long time, where they reelected Marion Barry after he was arrested for smoking crack with a prostitute or something. So, I'll never understand some aspects of politics, but, people are going to vote for who they're going to vote for.
Bleep set me up.
Yes. It's one of my favorite political quotes of all time. Speaking of people voting for who they're going to vote for, a few things happened last Tuesday in some primaries. Mitt Romney won the Republican nomination for Senate in Utah. No surprise there. Jared Polis won Colorado's Democratic primary and could be the first openly gay elected governor in U.S. history. But the biggest story is 28-year-old Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm going to mess up that name before this podcast is over. I know it. She defeated Representative Joe Crowley by a double-digit margin in the Democratic primary for New York's 14th district. Crowley was a 10-term congressman and the fourth-ranking Democrat in the House, and he outraised her 10-1 by 10-1 margin. But in the end, it didn't matter. She connected better with the district. I think she probably represents the district a little better. But the question is, what does this mean for the Democratic Party?
Well, I think that in this particular district in New York City, that is probably more in line with who lives there and who's being represented. I think in the nation as a whole. Watching Meet the Press with Chuck Todd yesterday, he made a good point, and he showed a number of statistics, which unfortunately I can't cite off the top of my head for you. But basically how in that microcosm that is the Bronx and Brooklyn that she has been chosen in the primary, that her, extreme progressive wing of the Democratic Party is successful. But in the rest of the country, that's not necessarily the case. That's not going to fly. So, for her, this looks good, most likely based on the numbers and the number of Democrats and the way the primary turned out. She's most likely going to get elected to Congress come November. But in the rest of the country over, I wouldn't expect too many of those Bernie-crats to really be that successful.
Yeah, he said she was a campaign organizer for Bernie Sanders. She super liberal, wants things like universal health care, federal job guarantees, and the abolition of ICE. Crowley, by the way, was no slouch himself. He was pretty liberal, but he'd become complacent. He hadn't had any primary challengers in 14 years. He didn't even show up to the debate. But this was really tough for me, Kevin, because for a long time I've said, it's time to get, for lack of a better term, get these old farts out of Congress, get the next generation in there, some young folks. But in an election like this, where the number one thing on my mind is make sure the Democrats take back the House, try to take back the Senate, just get more Democrats elected. It scares me when we take people who have been around for a long time and who are safe bets and then get rid of them. As we mentioned, she's going to win this district, but it just scares me because I don't want to see any infighting between the Democrats. They should all be unified against the Republicans.
Right. Unfortunately, that is the consequence of this primary result. It's going to shake some things up in a time when the Democratic Party certainly can't afford to shake too much within their own party. They've got to be united to go after the Republican agenda. So we'll see. Like you said, and then I had mentioned that she's most likely going to win this, so the Democrats probably will not lose the seat. However, will this cause a rift within the party, which causes the party to focus on the rift as opposed to what they're really working against, the Republican agenda?
Well, no matter what side you are on, whether it's right or left, I would say if you haven't watched it already, go watch the video of the moment she found out she won. It was really something to see. She didn't expect to win, I don't think. Everybody said she couldn't win. It wasn't covered by any of the major news publications. But when she found out she won, it was legitimate excitement, surprise, and happiness. And with everything that's been happening in this country over the past few years, I don't think we see that kind of happiness, that genuine happiness, that much anymore. So it was nice to see.
Certainly was. Reminded me of my own election night.
Oh, thanks for rubbing that in, by the way.
Oh, that wasn't meant to be.
I'm just joking. Hey, we're only, 16 months away from the next town council election. Piece of cake. So, in seriously, Kevin, what do you have for Kevin's Corner this week?
Well, Jesse, as the Lady Justice statue prominently displayed outside of many courthouses in this country implies, justice is supposed to be blind. The mechanism known as separation of powers gives the judicial branch the authority to overrule an overzealous president or Congress by declaring laws or executive orders unconstitutional. However, with the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy, we are once again faced with the prospect of the court becoming a conservative body for generations to come. Neither liberals or conservatives should be made to worry that the Supreme Court justices will legislate from the bench in a way that substantially changes the laws of the land rather than performing their true authority of judicial review and interpretation. The Supreme Court must remain nonpartisan to the extent that it is humanly possible. We must leave the partisan politicking to our elected representatives. The court has no place in the making of law, and as we have seen at times in our history, it serves as the last hope to put to rest inhumane or unethical practices such as legalized segregation and a host of other civil rights issues. Regardless of who occupies the White House, we, as citizens of these United States, should be able to rest assured that the court will remain impartial, that justice will be blind, and that liberties will be protected for us and for our posterity, for generations to come.
Nicely said, Kevin, as usual. I want to tell our listeners that we spent a long time on this podcast talking about what's not going well in this country, the things I think that we need to change, the things that we don't like. But with the 4th of July coming up this Wednesday, I hope everybody can step back for a second, take a moment and you look at all the things that we love about the country, how lucky we are to be in this country at this time of our lives, at this time of history, and how much we have that we see other people. I mean, the people coming at the southern border, they don't have what we have. They want what we have in the best possible way. They want the freedom. They want the ability to have a better life for their children. And I think sometimes we just forget how lucky we are. So as we're watching fireworks and drinking beer and grilling, I hope some people take a second and think about all those wonderful things that we get to have every single day.
Yeah, and it kind of, we wouldn't have an issue with immigration right now if not for the fact that this country is already great and does provide so much for the citizens and the people who live in the United States of America. So we should all keep that in mind as we celebrate this Independence Day, this 4th of July, and we should be proud of the country that we are. We don't have to be proud of the leadership, but we should be proud of what this country truly represents.
Well, Kevin, have a great time in Houston. Maybe we can get some man on the street coverage from you if you talk to anybody on the immigration issue down there, see what they have to say. You never know who you may come across. Keep an eye out for a crazy jacket. Maybe just be Melania walking around trying to find a detention center too.
I certainly will do that, and I'll look to get some feedback from down there, what's going on.
Great. All right, everybody, remember to go to our website at grabandbythepod.com where you can find our social media links, past podcasts, and anything you want to know about us. And other than that, we'll be back sometime next week after everybody returns back from vacations and we finish up with some of the crazy things we have doing in our own personal lives. And other than that, Kevin, it has been a great podcast, and I look forward to the next one.
You bet. Later.